Well, good evening. Michael, I went to 12 years of Catholic school, and I was always taught that the guardian archangel, the archangel, was Michael. I think we may have to rename that archangel to Mark, and Mark is here to tell us about himself.
All right, we can't wait to get into that. Of course, a huge supporter of Kelsey Fitzsimmons. But how about a little something on a judge that rivals Beverly Cannoni and Judge McCarthy? Naaman, you won't believe.
Justice, where are you? Michael and Linda are here.
Love you, Linda.
The world is justice. Will we ever find justice?
The courthouse the other day in the hallway, you're singing
Will
"Oh
we
Happy
know
Day."
justice when we see it? To be and down I lead the way. Hoping justice will win the day. Listener clues, finding justice where we can. Join us now, we're on the run. Justice is waiting, we'll see it done.
All right, banter alert, banter alert. Clear the decks. Those who don't like banter, come back in a minute. Speaking of that, we're going to have our comment show on Friday. That's where we've heard a few people say, just get to the stuff. Stop the banter. We're not stopping the banter. Okay, so you got some banter, or is it some?
Yeah, no. You cut me off before I could banter.
Sorry.
Okay,
Banter
all
away.
right. And it's like here you are. You're acting. I have two husbands. Okay, all right. You
Yeah, work
and my real one, who
and
never
real,
cuts me
yes.
off. Who never cuts me off, by the way. All right. Actually, I have a couple of things. It's been reported because I can't get out of Massachusetts that Enrique Delgado Garcia, who was killed. And somebody was indicted yesterday. We reported about it. That there were people who testified before the grand jury, Penton, Rodriguez, Montanez, and Lamont. I don't know how true that they may have been given immunity. So we'll have to see if you're right, Michael. Does the woman is the only one? Will she get
That's right.
indicted,
Blame it
or
on the
will
girl.
there be more? And then the other thing I thought I would go to is that there's two cases that we're dealing with concerning the First Amendment, which is in the news. And there's been some suggestion that when you're on like social media, you really aren't in the First Amendment, because the First Amendment is the algorithm. It's whatever the algorithm likes. We'll see a little bit of that maybe later on. But it's been reported by Christine Sarteshi, who's also on X, that a Virginia prisoner named Kyle Allen Hulbert, and I picked this up because my assistant of many years is named Patricia Hulbert, and my current assistant is Christina Hulbert. So I'm kind of partial to that name. Sued prison officials for banning a Stephen King book called Full Dark, No Stars. The book was supposedly too violent. Hulbert argued in court records that only a tiny part of the book, less than 0.02%, it's like a blood alcohol, has anything that could be seen as problematic. Those parts are key to the story and don't promote violence. And of course, it has won awards. It has a real literary value. Well, the judge has sided with the prisoner, and for now is allowing this case to move forward. In other words, it didn't get dismissed on summary judgment. In the same token, we had another case dealing with the First Amendment, and that isn't by SCOTUS today, dealing with, and I don't want to get into the politics of conversion therapy or not, but it's a law in Colorado about conversion therapy. And the justices, 8 of them, ruled it goodbye, so long, farewell, because that punishes free speech on what you're saying to people and how you're treating them, and you can't do it. It was an 8-1 decision with Judge Ketanji Jackson dissenting. So just to let you know that First Amendment free speech is all the way in our, shall we say, our DNA, especially when it comes to social media.
More importantly, what was that Stephen King book again? It didn't.
I threw it on the floor. So now
sorry,
you can't.
sorry.
Now
Okay,
I can't get it.
You dig around and find that.
On the floor, I can't get it.
Okay, put a pin in that.
You weren't listening. You weren't listening. I know.
Well, it sounded like the dark or dark.
It was.
Something.
It was something about. Hold on.
Yeah.
I'll be back.
Okay, see you soon. There's a motion to suppress coming up in the Matthew Farwell case. Not till May 14. They've changed the ability to file the briefs.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm coming back. I feel like the girl was jumping out of the window.
That's one thing, and then there's also just some dates to put down in your notebook here. Jury questionnaires will be filed under seal. Talking Matthew Farwell case. That'll be August 3rd. On the 17th, they will be responded to under seal, and the motions in limine will be on September 1st. And of course, the trial set now for October 5th, Matthew Farwell. And the last little buzz in that was this, was his brother the father? Whoops, no, he wasn't the father. What a cluster that was with the pleadings in that case. So now
that wait a second. Now that I've climbed out the window of the patrol car, because that's all over the internet, the woman who was a contortionist, right? The book is named, you're not getting over this, Full Dark, No Stars.
Full Dark, No Stars.
Okay.
Okay. Intriguing. That's interesting.
Okay.
All right. So this guy's been all over the internet. And I just think if you haven't seen this, you deserve to see it, especially in our world where we have highlighted judicial nastiness, and we've seen it up close and personal with Judge Cannoni and Judge McCarthy. Naaman. This is Judge Nathan Milleron or Milliron. Anyway, it's a Texas dude, Texas guy. So, and you, of course, will tell me if you can't hear this audio, but please tell me.
I can't read that.
Good.
You good?
Those are the overlapping stores between the stores outlined.
You're wasting my time this morning.
No, Judge. I mean, we have an overlapping issue in these two cases.
They don't seem to be that overlapping to me.
Well, we have the same
You
parties.
want to go to Jefferson County because you want Jefferson County jury.
Oh, I mean, Judge, we're the defendants in the case.
Okay.
We're they're plaintiffs. We haven't filed either one of these cases. They filed this case
Lien abatement
first.
is denied.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We filed a proposed order, but I have one here if you want.
Take it.
Jeff, you can briefly respond
You
about.
may not.
Well-
This hearing is done.
She's asking for a sanction.
Deputy, remove her from my bench now.
Your Honor, may I speak?
No, you may not. This hearing is over. Jesus Christ, these people today. Step away. You're about to be cuffed.
Okay, then. So,
Okay, then.
how do we like this dirt bag? So this guy, I've reached out to Kobe DeBose, who is the attorney in Texas who's basically outed this guy. And there have been so many other scenarios where he has been, you probably saw the one too, where he was really an asshole to the IT guy. That
Right.
was also making the rounds.
Right.
Then this note from Kobe DeBose says, I forgot to tell you all that he sent the cops out to the home of a juror in a trial he's currently overseeing when the juror called in sick. There were two alternates. Then he brought the rest of the jury out and told them the missing juror, quote, didn't feel like coming in today, end quote. And he would also have the other jurors arrested if they tried to do the same thing. The sick juror comes back in and the judge questions him in open court. Oh, what a dick.
Oh,
So,
it sounds like, remember when Brian Steele almost went to jail? He started taking off his shirt and everything with the judge in the YSL case,
I
right?
remember.
Yeah,
That's right. I
I
forgot Judge Glanville put him in the trifecta.
Put him in the trifecta. I was going to
idiots.
say the terror of judges. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So there are
Okay, so
there are no
I'm-
guardian angels.
I'm hoping we can get some local input from that and have them on because these are people that have to practice in front of this guy. All right. So
Well.
we had a much better experience in the Kelsey Fitzsimmons case last week with Judge Karp. Who knew? Who knew? I'll tell you somebody who's been following it more than, and maybe as much as more than anybody else. And that's this dude right here. Mark, how are you, buddy?
Very good tonight. I'm excited to be here. I follow up with you guys pretty regularly. I'm always tuning into your shows at least a few times a week and listening to all the latest news. So I'm excited for the invite and happy to be there. And Mike, it was a pleasure seeing you in action, live inside the courtroom and outside the courtroom.
And I apologize for my what may appear to be rudeness because I'm running around and there were so
Yeah.
many people and I didn't who's this giant guy, and I didn't even learn that really till the day I was leaving. And then you said hello to Linda as we were live there
Yes.
on the
Very
plaza.
nice to meet you. Right.
But just to make it official, you're 6'6", is that right? Is that the official
6'5",
6'5",
Yeah.
6'6" with thick socks.
Right,
But yeah,
exactly.
you're a presence. You're a presence, sir.
Well,
We
wait a
appreciate
second.
you
But
coming on.
I really have a question, totally unrelated to anything. Have you ever played basketball? And did you watch the Duke? Well, it's really two questions. Connecticut game.
Yes, I watched the Duke UConn game. I'm a UConn fan. The men's and women's teams are my two favorite college basketball teams, going back to probably Rebecca Lobo and Richard Hamilton, the
Wow.
Cal days and Gino days, obviously. And yes, I played a lot of basketball growing up and had a lot of success doing that at a moderate level at the college level. So I played it.
And the reason why I asked this, I know it interrupted Michael for a second, is we do a lot on the show to try to get people to know us, because when we give our opinions of where we're coming from, we want people to know where we're coming from. So we like to banter a little bit about how our background may affect what we see.
Yeah, absolutely.
So here's what I got an idea, because let's bookend this little adventure. Let's start with last week and your very up close and personal connection to one of the players, and then we're going to learn about why you're here, how you got into this, and other than your basketball background, learn a little more about you, because I think people might be somewhat interested in that. So let me see if I can find this as I'm shuffling my judge videos. Hold on just a second here. Hold on to get rid of that guy, and then we have. Now you were at the court every day, right? You were there in the courtroom every day.
Nope, just one day, just the final.
You were there
day.
just that one day?
That's it. Yeah. I work. I got a busy work schedule, so I had actually taken Thursday and Friday off. So I would have been in there on Friday too if it had gone that long. But yeah, just Thursday was the only day I ever made it up. Yeah.
I feel so much better then about my rudeness, because I thought, how was I here 4 days and I'm just now kind of bumping into this guy, and at that point really wasn't able to bump into you. So
no worries at all, Mike.
No, I'm glad we made this work out then. Let me see if I can find this. Hold on. Do you use StreamYard? Do you use something else?
I use StreamYard, yeah, just like everybody else does.
So do you enjoy some of the clunkiness that you have to put up with?
I don't like the fact that I got to upload my background like every single time, except for today. It worked perfectly today, but it's like I got to re-upload the thing, and I'll sit there for like go in and out of StreamYard like 3 or 4 times to get the background to operate. It's
so you have a green screen?
I have just a image. So there's an automatic thing in StreamYard where you can just upload the image automatically without the use of a green screen, which is really cool.
Oh, yeah, that is. That's a good idea. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to let the few seconds roll so people can get the feel for what's happening, and then you'll make your appearance.
Perhaps the Commonwealth could have easily met its burden if the officers had been wearing body cameras. But under these circumstances, I am left with a reasonable doubt, and I am duty-bound to find that the Commonwealth has not met its burden to prove that Ms. Fitzsimmons committed an assault by means of a dangerous weapon on Officer Noonan. And my verdict is, and must be, not guilty. With that, I will hand the signed verdict slip.
Who's that? Who's your buddy?
Greatest picture.
Now it looked to me like you were trying to be cool. You're trying not to kind of gloat and lord it over Noonan.
Yeah.
But clearly that was probably kind of hard to hide entirely, because we see a little smirk, a little something. What was that like?
Absolutely. That moment was fantastic. So actually I was probably smirking for a little while longer before that, but that security, the bailiff was in the way.
He was blocking.
And then he just happened to move and he could see me, but if he wasn't there in the morning, but he was there in the afternoon. But yeah, it was interesting sitting next to him. I obviously, I'm not going to lie, I was making little slight observations about his really stoic behavior throughout the whole time. He didn't really move, flinch, react. The only thing I noted was him and his wife were holding hands. I actually sat behind him during closing arguments. Then when I came back in the second time, I was right next to him. And again, I could have extended my hand up and that would have been the arm out, and that would have been the distance, about 3 feet, 4 feet maybe. But he wasn't far away at all, which was interesting because, again, it's my first time out here. I've been covering this strictly from the internet, ways away from Lawrence. But yeah, it was interesting seeing all those guys. But my most interesting part of the day was I was the first person outside the courthouse at about 7 a.m. when about 8 North Andover cops all rolled up in suits, and it was me and them. They didn't recognize me. Everything was fine, no issues there. But yeah, it was just one of the notable moments of the day, to say the least.
You've become a meme. There's a snapshot of the picture with you looking at Noonan, and it's become a meme. I want to liken it to the Michael Jordan jump shot in sports. So we're talking about sports. This is the sports shot in the Kelsey Fitzsimmons case of you staring at Noonan. And did you know if he knew who you were?
I don't think he knew who I was. And even if he did, he was so locked in. I actually thought he was a little too much locked. Obviously, I can't tell him what he needs to think, but he seemed a lot more locked in, as if there was some kind of consequence for this verdict, when it was really all about Kelsey and her assault charge. But they those officers walked out of that courthouse, all of them, just heads down. They fled the place. I mean, they walked out of there at a pretty fast pace, to say the least. But yeah, I didn't notice anything from him in terms of, other than him just looking forward the entire time and observing what happened.
Yeah, I was out in the plaza, I've been calling it, town center there, when they filed out, and it was pathetic. It was like a death march.
Oh yeah.
And it goes kind of shows you. We talked the whole time about, and I don't say this lightly, like it's a man's world. Like, this was the good old boy network, because she's one of them. She's a police officer too.
Right.
But they weren't going in to support her, and she was the one who shot who almost died. They were going in to support the guy who had been there,
Right.
And I think, as you know, Kelsey had a huge female following, a huge gender-based following, and I think part of it is because everyone kind of was in her position at some point in our lives.
Yeah.
Not shot, but in terms of dealing with the good old boys network.
Right. That was what was shocking to me too, was that I think there's almost like a mentality in that department where, because Noonan was at that point, and actively on duty, that's the side they all take to back him up. But it's blatantly obvious that this thing was an absolute disaster inside that room, that he overreacted or panicked, whatever he did. And he shot her, in a manner that was not justified. It's clear as day. Kelsey's, when she was on the stand and she was, direct and cross-examined by Bradel and Gubitosi, you can tell her story is true. And not only that, every fabric of her story plugs into everything we've always thought seamlessly. Where when Noonan talks, it's, there's no remorse about it. It's like, man, I wish I didn't have to shoot her. I wish she wouldn't have, it's just, I did what I had to do because. Where Kelsey,
he's a macho man. He's a tough dude. Come on, man. Come on.
And now his supporters are all over the internet saying, well, he saved her life by shooting her because she was just going to shoot herself. That's the excuse.
Boy,
that's a twisted way to look at things, I suppose.
Sure. Yeah, to say
so while you're sitting there, he says nothing. I mean, there's no real movements. There's just nothing.
Nothing. I mean, when I'm sitting in those seats, I'm adjusting my legs, my arms. I'm moving forward, moving back. I get a little uncomfortable every 2 to 3 minutes. Him, it's just, he was just there. He was statuesque. His wife was statuesque. Several of the officers as well. The same thing, just totally, they look like the Red Auerbach statue on the bench in Boston, just sitting there and not moving. It was interesting. Somebody asked me, was it uncomfortable for me? No, it wasn't. That does not make me uncomfortable at all. Again, it's a controlled environment, but even if it wasn't, what's there to really be afraid of? But I wasn't even in awe of any of them. I was just like, it's just nothing notable to me, but it was kind of interesting to be sitting next to him, though. I kind of like that fate had that for me. It was like, you get to sit next to Noonan, and that was I kind of like that part.
And he was in there first, right? He was in there first.
Yes,
right?
That's correct. Yep.
And then so you had to be one of the first in to get across the way and sit over there, right?
I trailed a couple people, so I was actually one of the last. There was about 3 seats open. A few people picked their seat first, and because there was like probably 3 of us, and I think there were 3 seats left in the far end at least. And then I just picked that front seat to sit down. I see Common Sense Investigators there. She was right next to me.
Right.
Yeah, she's been in our chat a lot. She actually reported last night. I didn't really dime her out last night on the show, but I did put a tweet out today because she did say a number of times she was whether or not Justin the alien, thinking about whether he went into the house, was armed, and she has reported to all of our viewers that it's reported that he's always armed. So Lauren, Katie Lauren was in our show.
Excellent. Yeah, I love her. She's been great.
Yeah. I mean, the coverage has been unbelievable. It's really mushroomed over time. And why not? When you see how this woman was treated and how the cops acted, it's easy to pick a side, in my opinion. So let's go back now, Mark. Let's set the Wayback Machine, Mr. Peabody. Let's go back to just
that's a reference.
That's a thank you, Mark. That's a bold.
I understand that one. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes. So let's go back And you play basketball through, was it high school, college?
High school and college. Yeah, a couple of years of college I played and all that. Lower level, not like D1, not for a major school, nothing like that. So,
Okay.
but
What did you study?
I studied. I like to keep it quiet, but I say I studied communications. Yeah, I don't like to really boast about my.
All right.
I try to keep my personal stuff a little bit more sheltered. I apologize. Yeah, but I studied communications.
Right. And what's your social security number?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's right. Let me get that for you.
Okay, so at some point, when you were not in the witness protection program, you decide, this true crime thing. You have a bug for it. How did that develop?
Sure. So in April, right around this, maybe April of 2023, Aidan Carney had been posting about Karen Reed, and I had followed his blog for years, probably going back to 2014, 2015, somewhere around there. And one day I was just online and just perusing around, and I had come across his article about it. And I said, what's Aidan up to here? Why is he on the courthouse steps with signs? What's going on? So I read the article. And at that point, I had already had the Mazza Media platform, a website going back to about 2014. A YouTube channel had been active probably right around that same time, but something I'd been using for weekly sports shows and movie shows for 2018 onward. So I'd really done movies, sports, other things that came up over the years like COVID, other major incidents we talk about from time to time, but never anything that was true crime related, at least that I can recall, unless it was related to sports roughly. But I started to read his article, and I was, the more and more I read about it, the more and more I wanted to talk about it. And at that point, I had my show in a hiatus. So I had done a show with my friends, my cousin, and a few other people over the years, and we kind of went into like a suspended state. And then I wanted to talk about this case online. So I just figured, I'd talk about it. I'd have like maybe 5 to 10 viewers tops over the years. And the first show or two I did was 1 or 2 people in the comments, and like one episode was like me and just one guy talking the whole time, and never would have expected that Twitter was going to get active for me. I started posting on Twitter, then I started to get a lot of followers, and I was like, okay, the next thing I knew, I was heard my name a lot, and I just never expected that. But that's pretty much the origin of it. Was I read a Turtle Boy article, learned about the story, started following Microdots and hit Turtle Boy's videos, and then the famous Jill Daniels call happened one weekend, and I've been hooked on this stuff ever since. And 3 years have gone by.
Well, before you get into that, I just want to remind everybody that I do represent Aidan in one of the New Jersey cases. Twitter trolls have been active a lot the past 2 days because he did such a great interview. And having said that, they all. They all think they can practice law. Nothing else to do. Yeah, absolutely. So, I keep telling people that he really has some amazing stories and has broke some amazing cases. So, so glad to hear that he's responsible for your interest in this and what you've done, which we haven't even gotten to yet.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So it's very easy as a Karen Reed follower, Aidan Carney coverage follower, to transition into Kelsey Fitzsimmons, and that it's part of the same menu. It appears, craziness in the Northeast. But then you decide you were going to do something more personal, not just cover it. How did that all evolve when you became, kind of a lightning rod for fundraising for her?
Yes. So I had done a lot of fundraisers. I've been on a lot of fundraisers for Karen. What really triggered it was around Christmas time in 2024. Nurse Kim had done a Christmas Karen Reed fundraiser, and I kind of had the thought that maybe I should be doing more fundraisers more often for Karen. So I started to do that heading into the second trial. Once that ended, that was the fundraising portion kind of was, kind of subsided because they shut the Give Send Go down for a while. So when the Kelsey story happened, I had heard about it on the 8th. It was brought to my attention. And then after that, I saw her interview outside of court, and, I was being told, hey, you should follow this, you should cover this, what have you. And then 3 days later, Judge McCarthy Naaman decides to send her back to jail. And, I was just kind of getting into the story those first 3 or 4 days. Then once she went to jail, that's when I had a little mental explosion. I was like, okay, what is this all about? 3 days later, I just said, you know what? I did a lot of fundraisers for Karen. Let me do a fundraiser for Kelsey, and maybe that's what I should do. I saw she had a Give Send Go. I think at that point it was somewhere between 3,000 and 8 to 9,000 in donations, somewhere around there. And then I said, I'm going to do one. Then I kind of got after a while in the swing of it. And I was like, every 2 weeks. And when Common Sense Investigator began coming on my show, she had an idea of doing those in between the weeks. I did it. Then I'd go on her show. So we kind of like just every week had a fundraiser going.
Tag team. Yeah.
Yeah. It was great. Michael Morrissey kind of inspired this too because of his comments about asking money for Hank Brennan. Karen Reed's defense team is uncommonly well funded. Once he said that, I said that was the highest compliment that anybody that's ever done a fundraiser or ever donated to a fundraiser has ever gotten. And I said Kelsey needs that same exact thing. And I really early on wanted to get that in motion for her. It was a lot of fundraising and just keep that going. And I'm proud of that. I just feel like, doing a show is one thing, but I wanted to do something that was all because I also don't host shows. I'm also kind of an advocate. So I'm kind of someone that wants to just push money for her. So I decided to go that route and I'm happy. I'm happy that we can help her out and get that because every show, every person that raises awareness, does a fundraiser or does not do a fundraiser, it doesn't matter. Simply covering this is great because it raises awareness and people learn about it. So when those fundraisers do come around, more people know about it. So it's an all hands on deck type deal where the more shows, the more content creators cover this, the more it's talked about online. It just makes it a bigger thing, which is outstanding.
So we're lawyers, okay? We've seen bad judges a lot.
Yeah.
But when Kelsey was thrown in jail, I think that's what really got everybody. I mean, I don't think Judge McCarthy-Naiman knew that she was, shall we say, digging her own grave by doing that. That's what really was totally outrageous. And not just the throwing her in jail, was her attitude and her tone of voice and her questions. It was everything to us. We were outraged. And if you listen to Michael, he'll say, Judge McCarthy, he can't even get it out of his mouth.
That was September 11th.
On September 11th. So was because you are, you were covering sports and other things. Did this seem out of the ordinary, or was it just something that it was a personal to my heart? That's a stab.
Yeah, for me, the Karen Reed story was, I don't like people that are placed in situations that are unfair. That's always been something I've been through, been like my whole life. And even though I'd never covered true crime stories, I just got my imagination captured by the reality of what was going on to Karen Reed. And it just seemed to me it was extremely clear she was being persecuted. And when I saw Kelsey Fitzsimmons make the comment, which was so similar to what Karen said in 2023, which is the truth will come out, where Karen said, we know who did this. And those two comments to me, both times just got me to believe in them as individuals, in their innocence, in their stories. And I just felt like, here we go again, what's happening in our state. Now, what's most interesting is at that time, I didn't have necessarily a full, complete understanding of her entire story. But what I was really captivated by was the Judge Kathleen McCarthy-Naiman, and her behavior, because that, again, got my alert out for Judge Beverly Cannoni type judge, even worse, in my opinion, honestly.
Yep.
And once I saw that, I said, there's something to this once again. That's when I started to follow this and start to look more into this and say, what's going on here? And, my attitude is, and, I just want to help people out like this and do the best I can to assist them with their best chance of succeeding. And the biggest issue here is you have a lot of people in this country that are in those sets of circumstances, and they're like anybody else. They have, a certain amount of funding that they naturally have from their jobs, or they have a house, and they have to sell their house, as Karen and Kelsey did. And, these people shouldn't have to lose their financial lives because other people, like we saw with Karen or we saw with Kelsey, decide to say, oh, it was Karen. Oh, Kelsey did this. And I just don't agree with that. And my attitude is to put them in the, do what I can do to give them a higher percentage chance of excelling with a limited amount of financial damage done to their what they had for wealth or funding before in their personal lives, so just, I want to make sure these people's pockets don't get run dry by this process, and they can continue on with their lives after they're acquitted, because they're always acquitted because they're innocent. And it's just, like I said, it's one of the things that's horrible about the legal system is these people have to fork over so much money just to say, I'm innocent, I didn't do it, this thing's a total lie.
Yeah, it costs a lot of money to be innocent.
Right.
It's not free. It's not. Yeah, it's not like,
Right.
Oh, you're innocent. Here's the refund on all the
Right.
money you spent proving that.
Right.
So let's talk about money. Did you reach $100,000 over the period that you've done these different fundraisers?
I raised about 42,000 off my own that I calculated. I think that number is a little lower because what happens is a lot of donations tend to trickle in the hours that follow, and people might watch the replay the next day and donate $100 and say Mazza's fundraiser, but it's not counted. So it was, and then I always like to say to Common Sense Investigator, we should always count each other's. Even though we're guests, we're still technically on that fundraiser. So I figure, maybe around 50,000. I put in 2 hours on the Glare, so maybe I'm like, maybe I'll, as a guest or host, it's like, you're participating. I always say so. That and the popcorn store. So I definitely say probably, with all the fundraisers they've either hosted or been on, it's contributed to probably about 50,000 is my estimate at this point. Yeah,
and we're not ignoring others like Will, the Glare friend of the program.
Yes.
Lots of folks have done them, but others have been kind of forefront, and that's why we wanted to talk
Thank
to
you.
What do you think about? I mean, the folks that are contributing. I mean, where are they coming from? Do you see a pattern? What can you take from that?
Sure, that's a great question. That's an outstanding question. A lot of these people are inherently, like myself, from the Karen Reed and Turtle Boy worlds, where they're people that followed those cases, and then through the pipeline of watching shows like Nurse Kim, your show, the Glare, Turtle Boy, Jess Machado, whomever, have come to learn about that story, and it kind of seems like these things always get a little. The narratives start to change online a lot when more channels start to talk about it, or more people online tend to talk about one thing. That tends to come to the forefront. And it was great because you saw so many people that were instrumental in helping Karen, helping Aiden, whomever, Sandra Birchmore, for example, that, used their channels. Fervent was another person that did daily videos that were hilarious. That was a Karen supporter, Turtle Boy supporter, I believe, for both of them. And, raised a lot of awareness on his show. So that was kind of great. And again, these people, again, not only Massachusetts people, but people across the country, people from Canada. I'm sure you guys get the international viewers as well on your channel.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So it's been Melanie Little, my mistake. Melanie Little, for goodness sakes, I didn't even mention. I feel bad about that. She's one of the original people to talk about this months before I ever knew about the story, quite honestly. Yeah,
I am surprised by some folks who, we had China, not a lot from China. I'm not sure if they're suppressed. They're suppressing justice served in China, but there, there's Australia, big in Australia, Ireland, the UK in general. We've had some Germanys. I mean, it just makes me wonder: is everything so great at home that you're focusing on this case in the U.S.? Right. Are you intrigued by the international interest?
I am, absolutely, because as a United States citizen, I don't usually follow international news based on local based crimes, maybe I'll call it that, in other countries. If I do follow worldwide news, it's your typical, there's a war right now, there's a war that happened, there's something major that happened in something like that, obviously, but something that's more localized, like a local police department matter in another country, I would never, find myself doing it. So I'm impressed that, we have people from so many other countries that are tuning in to localized news or state-based news to show their support. Many of them donating as well, which is just absolutely awesome. Like, our friend Broken Baker from Denmark.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
He's covering all these cases.
We asked Broken Baker to use some of his video at one point. He graciously, absolutely,
Yeah.
And I said, thank you so much. He said, well, we bake a bigger cake together.
That's right.
But we always give him credit. I mean, the one thing I always
Yeah,
find that we like to give content creators credit where
And
some
he's
people don't. But
he's Denmark, is that right?
Denmark, yes.
Denmark.
Good pal.
Yeah.
Good pal of mine. I love that guy. He's
Oh,
great.
yeah, I mean, how could you
Yeah.
not be? He just seems like
Yeah.
a regular dude. You know?
And everyone in our chat, you see, is putting where they're from and all over. Even in our chat, they're here from all over England, no matter how late it goes. And our mods, Sheila Duffy in Ireland. Yeah. But here's a question I have for you. I mean, we all want to see some justice to McCarthy Naaman, okay? And Tim revealed on Aiden's show the other night that there's at least three complaints, I think more now, one of which he filed against her. How does how would it work that she would have some discipline given to her when the Supreme Judicial Court validated what she did, which was a shock, I think, to all of us? How do you think that's going to work out?
I think she's going to get away. I think this is going to be another case of she's going to get away with it scot-free, and nothing's going to ever, fall upon her in terms of that. What they've done is they took that whole issue that was exposed by Officer January from the correction facility and Tim Bradel, bringing it to the court's attention. They're just going to sweep that in the rug and in-house it and say, well, she was never really the attorney, the judge that was going to preside over this case anyways. So, it's a moot point. They said they did what they could to quell that very quickly, which is saddening. And the Supreme Judicial Court's been very disappointing as well. I hate to say it, but they were disappointing between the Karen Reed trials. When Karen Reed and her defense team went up there with Weinberg and Attorney Weinberg and attempted to get charges, basically have a jury poll done, and that got shut down. And here we come back with this, about a year later. It's the same thing. They just don't want to hear about it. But in the face of overwhelming evidence, overwhelming information that's provided to say this judge cannot be trusted, and she's doing things that are not reported to the defense team, holding interviews, and that was very. I mean, if you already thought that judge was sinister, then you hear about that. That's big time crazy right there.
Yeah, some robes protecting robes, some would say.
Yeah.
And we heard little rumors that McCarthy Naaman is somehow connected to others in law enforcement, or have you pursued that? You got any hard info on that?
In terms of her involvement with law enforcement?
Well, yeah, or relatives, by marriage or otherwise.
Show might have broken up.
Broken up a little bit.
I haven't heard much about. If I have heard about that, I haven't followed too much. Show might have glitched there for a second. I apologize, Mike. I hadn't heard too much about that. I might have heard about that in passing, that she might have had certain connections to, because she was from North Andover. Is my understanding, and there was concerns about her having connections there. But that's the thing, is that when you see a judge acting that way, how can you not start to say, is she connected to these people? What's the motivation? That's what I always ask. Why would a judge that would typically be impartial have it in for Kelsey the way she did? Be as rude to Bradel as she was. And then it just begs the question, what are your ties? Who are you affiliated with? And I thought that, Judge Cannoni was a gatekeeper for Michael Morrissey, who was gatekeeping for the state police and the Canton police. It was a trickle up effect where everybody above each person was doing a favor or covering for the person below them. And it went right down to the judge. And I just think that stuff, that's very scary. Yeah. That's very scary for people like Kelsey and Karen.
And we got an anonymous email just the other day. We didn't check into it from someone who wants to remain anonymous, obviously, that says that there's a Massachusetts appellate court judge named Eric Naaman who lives in North Andover, different address from McCarthy Naaman, but was wondering whether there was any connection. We haven't had a chance to look into it. And what upset me for the Supreme Judicial Court is until these cases, because as you know, I did try the Hernandez case, the double homicide with the not guilty in Massachusetts. Until these cases, the SJC up there was considered fabulous. It was in the forefront of forensic issues, of identification issues. For people that don't know, if there's not an out-of-court identification prior to a trial, you can't come in and say that's the person that did it. One of the few state Supreme Courts that have done that. It also held that ballistics is not a science. So they in dealing with some criminal issues that had to do with either forensics or identification, they've been in the forefront, and it's so disappointing to me to see what's happened here. I just can't.
Yeah. It also makes me wonder, Mark. What do they have to see? If you've seen what we've seen unfold in the Bev Cannoni world, in the McCarthy Naaman world, what more do you need?
Yeah. I know that bothers me a lot about this, because when it goes right up to the judicial level like that, when you're already saying, well, I don't trust the Canton police or the state police, I don't trust the North Andover police in this situation. Then you see the judges basically playing gatekeepers. I mean, as bad as Beverly Cannoni was, I mean, she was definitely your movie villain, but McCarthy Naaman, she heavily impacted
She's
Kelsey's life.
unhinged. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
unhinged. And,
Yeah.
and in the last hearing where she appeared and had to eat shit and basically backtrack what she had done in the least offensive way to her, to make it sound like she was still in total charge here, but we knew she had been slapped down and said, look, you've got to let Kelsey Fitzsimmons go, do the scram thing, release her to her mom. Right. She gives her mom the third degree. So even in her opportunity to be human, she was not. And then she just, she's gone. Has anybody seen or heard from her in a while? I know she's been on the docket for some other cases.
Yeah, I couldn't believe what I saw throughout this. And what bothers me too is you see Bradel, when he was dealing with that judge, just over and over and over again, making sense, saying the right things, and just getting shut down every single time by her, the SJC. I'll tell you, the biggest thing he ever did was he got her off that case. That was a blessing, because we would have sat through a jury trial.
Oh my God.
And I don't think the jury would have ever reached a not guilty. Excuse me, would have ever reached a guilty verdict. But I think that the problem with this is that I think the Noonan Kelsey thing is very easy for a jury to get tripped up on and not understand reasonable doubt. And I think you might have had like a 10 that believed Kelsey's innocent and 2 that might have believed in her guilt. And it might have just been like a tug of war like that. So I'm glad he got Judge Karp. I'm glad he went with the bench trial, and it just got this thing over quickly, because this thing could not afford to go. 2 trials of this would have been madness.
Could you imagine hung jury and then a retrial? Could you imagine? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I've heard from Michael about the atmosphere in the courtroom, but we want to hear from you about what the atmosphere in the courtroom was, especially since you were seated right behind Kelsey and Bradel and next to Noonan, and had a really good view of Judge Karp when he stood up to render his verdict. So what were you feeling? What were your emotions?
Yep, absolutely. So I had no emotions actually at all, believe it or not. I was very, very the first time in the morning, I was basically just kind of intrigued about the closing arguments. In the afternoon, I was gloating like you read about even before the verdict. I was looking around, making eye contact with a lot of fellow supporters, giving them the reassurance nods, like, we got it. This is in the bag. It wasn't arrogance. It was just quite simply, I knew it was going to be reasonable doubt. I knew nothing bad was going to happen. I could just feel it in my blood. I'm like, this is going to be, I was loose. I was happy. I was ready to go. And, I think I got not nervous, but just kind of, I got a little anxious for about 30 seconds during Karp's talking, because I like Bradel said on Turtle Boy Show recently, I felt that Karp just kind of stretched out his moment and just kind of talked. And it's like, okay, let's just get to the point. Let's just, just bring this thing home and let's get out of here and let her walk out the door and celebrate. Just, because the first thing he said was, this was a tough decision. Okay, it's reasonable doubt. As soon as he said that, I'm like, it's reasonable doubt. This thing's over. I mean, if it was a tough decision to make, then he made no decision. It's reasonable doubt. It's over. Now, if he never said that, just went into it, well, obviously, he would have gone either way and we wouldn't know. But once he said it was a tough decision, he was kind of like this. I'm like, reasonable doubt. She's out of here.
I think I've been screwed over in court too many times, because I never have that feeling. Never before a decision is rendered. What was it about the closings that made you so confident?
The closing arguments with Bradel, I thought Bradel was very good, if not perfect, because I felt that he kept everything concise. He made his point. He kept it to about 15 minutes. He talked about the law and how it applies to this situation. He talked about Kelsey's testimony, just everything there, the nuts and bolts of it all. Didn't dress it up. Just was basically straightforward. This, and that. Organized it very nicely and made his presentation. Gubitosi showed me no confidence in himself, because he had to basically put on a dramatic presentation in that courtroom. When he picked up, I saw the handgun. As you saw that too. They brought in the box. They placed the firearm on the desk before it all began. and he's picking the thing up and he's dry firing it in the courtroom. When I saw that, that was the most shock. That was the only thing that really
I
shocked me
thought
all
that
day. I
was
was like,
really.
We were all
Yeah.
shocked as lawyers who've been
Yeah.
in the court with firearms.
Yeah.
We were absolutely shocked. You have to have, usually you can't do that, or you have to have a trigger guard, and you have to have the white thing on
Right.
the top, and the sheriff has to check everything beforehand. And then he pointed it.
Yeah, and
pointed
Mark,
it.
you had a different angle than I did because I was
Yeah.
adjacent to him, so I couldn't get that. It looked to me like he was pointing pretty darn close to the judge.
yeah.
From your angle, was he offline to a degree?
The
or
far
what?
right back corner, the back right to the judge's left shoulder in that back corner, the opposite corner from what was right to your left, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just seemed to me recklessly close.
Yeah.
You know, for
And then
what?
he doesn't check it. He doesn't pop it and look down the chamber at all. He doesn't check if there's a magazine. He holds it like, I guess it was pre-checked. I don't care if it's pre-checked.
I don't either.
You should always do that yourself, because God forbid.
Ask Alec Baldwin how that worked
Sure.
out.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It was just unnecessary. I mean, if he wanted, he could just use his hand, his thumb and his pointing finger just to say, hey, this is a simulation of this, and just be like this, not grabbing a firearm and, doing that.
Was that
Well,
desperation? I
he
don't
wanted
know.
the photo. He wanted the photo opportunity.
Sure.
The
Well, he
photo
got
opportunity,
that.
everyone showed,
Yeah.
and he got that. It would be like if you asked the defendant to hold the gun. To hold the gun. The defense would
Put the
immediately
glove on.
check, but
Put
the-
the glove on.
Right.
Put the
Yeah.
glove on, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. So when you heard Tim the other night say that Martha Coakley had gone to the prosecutor's office, gone to the DA's office, and asked what he couldn't bear to do it. What would happen if she's convicted, and they weren't going to give her jail time? Did you feel like Kelsey really had been a triple betrayal? What was that about?
I agree. I think that's considering all she's been through, the house arrest, the scram monitoring, all that she's been under. It feels like that's quite dramatic, given what the prosecutor had intended to put down as what the charges were going to be. The punishment was going to be if a guilty verdict was reached. So I just thought that this whole thing was just another, like Karen Reed, the whole thing was oversold. It was overdone. And again, you're putting, this is all because what are you going to give her, probation? What was the plan? What was your goal? And that was a great move by Martha Coakley, because, her being that former attorney general, I got to speak with her briefly and say hello, thank her for her efforts. And she just said, I do what I do. She's very humble about it. But that was good of her. As a former attorney general, she's been, through the ins and outs of the justice system, to the highest level an attorney can get. And other than, I guess, if you're a judge. But I just thought that she did a great job. The team did a great job. And again, I just think that this thing was all for what? Probation. And that's what happened with Karen. The whole thing turned out to be a 2-year trial over a DUI.
Right.
Yeah. It's the level of pride, as they say, goeth before a fall. Because they were willing to just push. I was very impressed with Martha, having spoken to her a number of times, and having been at the level she has been in the biz. She really knew her role and didn't try to overstep or get in Tim's way, and it was impressive. I like that.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is an interesting question. Kama and Gaga, would a unanimous jury verdict been required in Kelsey's trial? It was unanimous in the court of public opinion. Mark, you may not be a lawyer, but you can answer that.
Yeah, I would say it'd have to be unanimous, 12 for 12. Yeah.
And then absolutely. So we have such great questions here, and if you're making you uncomfortable, I'll answer them. But what do you think of people going to sit in on her cases, as McCarthy naming, just to make her uncomfortable? Any thoughts about that?
So supporters is what this question is referring to. I think that's fantastic. I like the fact that people are getting out there and doing this, and for multiple cases. I just think that support's the biggest thing you can provide. And I think it's great for people like Kelsey, Aiden, Karen, other people that are facing charges we don't agree with, obviously, and they're out there supporting it. It's a great system that we've got developed here, from YouTube to boots on the ground to people that are doing fundraisers, donation, popcorn sales, all that stuff. It's been a great thing. So I love to see the support. Scott McGinnis is another person. Mike, you saw him more than enough, I'm sure. Yeah, he's a warrior.
It feels wrong if he's not there. It's like something's missing. He is unbelievable. And it doesn't matter how. The first day of trial was Monday. It was a cold mother, and he was the only one out there on the plaza with his thing. his
Yeah.
flag and his sign. He was proud of his newly printed
Right.
sign because one of the earlier hearings, he had it scrawled, like a ransom note on a cardboard. So he had one printed up nice and pretty like for the
Yeah.
trial itself.
He's just always there. Just great. I mean, and it can't be cheap for the gas to get to every time he's going, and the time and
Right.
the commitment and just the emotion. So speaking about the emotion, you got to really kind of get a hug from Kelsey after all
Yeah.
this, after raising all that money, after doing what you did. What was that moment like for you?
Absolutely. So what many may not know is that's actually the second hug of the day. That was the one that got the notoriety online. But the first hug, I'll talk about both. But the first hug was right after the closing arguments. I had stood up to walk out, and Courtney Healy had flagged me down to talk briefly. And Courtney had been in my chat a lot while Kelsey was in the corrections facility. And tuned into a lot of my shows, and I always said Kelsey's watching. But then all of a sudden, once I got done talking to her, I looked to my right. I think Kelsey had said Mazza or something. I looked at her, and I saw this look on her face, and it was a face of great gratefulness, great emotion, great passion, and thankfulness for the fundraisers. And I think sometimes when I do these shows, I get or fundraisers, I get so business-like when I do them that I just rip the emotion right out of it in my own head. And I don't even think that I'm actually even helping people. It's just I get so caught up in like, we hit this number, we hit that number. This is great. We're helping somebody. Awesome. I think sometimes my reality of how it's actually impacting people, I forget about that until you actually see Kelsey in person. And she was overwhelmingly grateful. And I was, we had a big hug, obviously, and she thanked me. Which is great. And I think that hug is not just for me, it's for all the people that have been on the show and donated to those fundraisers, because it's a group effort, but it just shows her gratefulness and all that. So the second hug was afterwards. That was after the verdict. And I was standing on the far end. So I kind of walked away. The family and the defense team were kind of, and friends were kind of right outside the door. Up against the rail, and just all kind of hugging and all that. So I stood up to the side. I didn't want to be over there for that moment. I just wanted the family and the defense team to kind of have the time that they chose, however long it would be, to celebrate, get their hugs, celebrate the elation of it all. And so I was waiting on the other side. And I just waited, and I just was like, oh, I'll just mind my time, talk to some people, and maybe I might have a quick chance to just say, hey, congratulations to a few of them. So not even thinking, anybody was approaching me. All of a sudden I just hear Mazza. I looked, Kelsey walking right towards me. I'm like, oh, hey, yeah, congratulations. And she gave me a big hug, and I said, you earned it. You earned this victory. You've been through a hell of a lot. You didn't deserve it. And congratulations. She said, thank you so much. You've done so much for all of this, and I'm grateful. And that was essentially the exchange. And I didn't realize that moment was on camera until I went online, and Aiden had caught the lead ups. I had 4 nicely timed photos of that shot. That was great. I'm happy for her. And again, it just shows her character, which I always believed in. I always believed in her good character. And someone like that's that grateful to people that are supporting her, that went out of her way. I mean, she was over there with her family and friends and went out of her way to come, thank me. That was
good thing you're 6'5". That really that helped her pick you out of the lineup.
I had to bend down. Yeah, I had to bend down. Obviously, I would do like the bend down hugs, and it's always.
Hey, let me ask you this, Mark, because I'm amazed every time I see her, hear her talk. Knowing what she's gone through. Are you as amazed about that as I am, that she has rebounded from this?
Yeah, I am. She definitely physically healed a lot throughout all of this. You could tell when she first got out initially on September 8th, you could see the physical reflection of the trauma she had been through. But as time went on, you could see the strength, build up. And she, I think that getting out of jail, getting out of there, having some time to be at home at the very least was productive as well. Getting back, getting to the hospital obviously as much as possible however much she did that or little. But she definitely, you could see her spirits go up and up as time went on. And she did a great job. This is a very difficult situation to be through. And really, honestly, the hardest part's still to come right now for her. That's really the the greatest desire of her heart, despite, getting out of jail is great. Getting out of, house arrest is great. Having these charges dropped are great. Having everything else that's happened positively is great, especially the judge being removed. But, the biggest piece of this all is the motherhood aspect. And that's definitely to come here. So I'm thinking, fate's on her side. You can tell, you can see it. You can kind of see the way everything just kind of keeps going in her favor, and it's going to continue to do so right through to the end. April's going to be a huge month for her, and it's going to fly by, which is good. And it's going to be, these problems are going to start to subside real quick, I think. I think family court's going to play out in a way that at least sees her with joint custody. I'm looking forward to that. But again, I just think that mentally and physically, she looks great. You can see the vibrancy. She was fantastic on the stand. She really displayed her intelligence, her knowledge, the way she answered questions, obviously well prepared by her defense team as well. And then at the end of the day, regardless of whatever her natural abilities are, regardless of whatever preparation she might have had, she had the truth on her side. And what's easier to do than answer questions truthfully and honestly, which she did. And I thought her answering those questions honestly, like, for example, admitting to lying about where the guns were. Why did you lie about the location of that? Well, I did this because perfect, and it made sense with her because it fit the frame of what her claim was against Noonan, that she had lied about it so she could do exactly what she's always been claiming to say. And that was one of the greatest examples of her testimony fitting exactly what her side of the story was, that it was a suicidal attempt. That's why she lied about the firearms. That's why she did what she, it was made perfect sense. And all it did was refute the North Andover Police Department and make them look bad because what they did was unacceptable. And she said this recently. I'll yield back in a moment. I apologize for being long-winded here. But these officers, they could have just told the truth from the beginning that I messed up. I accidentally shot her. I can't believe it. But he didn't want to face those repercussions. They chose to get up there and say, no, she tried to, do this, which he said numerous times during his time on the stand.
Oh yeah,
they had to sell it.
She tried to kill me. She tried to kill me.
Yeah. So do you think, Mark, that story had to do with the fact that they thought that she was not going to survive and then he could get charged with some type of involuntary manslaughter or manslaughter? Do you think that? And then the second thing I want to ask you, because this is a question that everyone wants to know, were you privy to why Kelsey's mom had to leave the courtroom, and what was your reaction to that?
My understanding of that, I think that might have had something to do with the sequester because she was a witness. I'm not sure. But my understanding was that after she had already testified, she actually could have come back. But I'm not sure. I think Gubitosi might have had something to do with that. Yeah. But I was kind of a little bit more fuzzy on that.
It was weird. And that's why I went to Lauren and I asked her. And so it was the DA through one of his henchmen who was in the courtroom saying, she shouldn't be in here. And remember, Linda, the reason was, well, we don't have people in here supporting the DA.
Unbelievable.
Is that ridiculous?
Ridiculous.
So she had a taste of, some of the trial and then had to be removed. So just, it seems consistent with the rest of the crap that they seem to want to pull there and run roughshod over the normal folks.
So going back to the A part of that question, because I'm not going to let you off the hook. Do you think that the story was concocted because they didn't think that she was going to live?
I absolutely believe that's the case. And I think to use a second example to validate that, if you look at the house being breached and the information that was compromised on her laptop, it seems to me that there was a sense that she was going to die from this. And I think they figured, well, if she dies from this, why bother telling the truth? And God willing, she survived, which blew up their whole story. Similar to what happened to Karen. They thought she would just go along with it and be whatever.
Take a deal, right?
Right. Yeah. And that never happened, and it blew things up for them. And it's the same thing here. They thought, I think they thought for sure. I think after that happened, they were in there and they just said, yeah, you accidentally shot her. She tried to shoot you and you shot her. It's not an accident. I think that was something along the lines of what they concocted. There's no doubt. Because they're all, when they walk in that courtroom, they all walk in there like a wolf pack, and they're a brotherhood. You could see it in the hallway. When I was in the hallway with all of them for hours, they're all, as you'd expect cops to be, just very much aligned with one another, teammates, brotherhood, and then nobody acts against the brethren, essentially, seems to be the mentality here. But Kelsey Fitzsimmons shouldn't have to bear the consequences of the actions of an officer who operated and made a mistake. And I would have appreciated, and I'm sure everybody would, if he had just would have come out and said, hey, this was an accident.
Of course.
He might have had some level of justification. Well, she had a handgun. I thought she was, but then I later realized she wasn't. But by that point, I'd already, that might have been a way to kind of get out, get through it all. But they decided to impact Kelsey's life beyond not only being shot, but to basically do things to her that would allow her to go to jail. And that was, and back to jail later. And they really messed with her life in a big way. And I'm hoping that they'll civilly sue that police department to, oblivion.
I said that to Michael. I said, I'd see
Yeah.
my job. I don't care whether you're going or not, because they're not going to take her back
Yeah.
and what they've done to her.
Right.
What was your biggest emotion, though? Was it relief? Was it fear? Was it happiness? What was that as you sit here today, your biggest emotion that you were left with? Not, and I think you can separate it maybe from covering the case and from the trial.
Yeah. For me as an individual, I felt rewarded by the fact that I had, believed in her story, believed in her innocence, and saw that come to play out. I think that, as someone that believes in things like fate, and the fact that I was not going to be able to make it on Wednesday if it ended, but then it pushed into Thursday like it did. And Thursday was the first possible day I could be there.
So you're responsible for pushing.
No, not going that far. No. I just felt that, this was just great just to see the way everything played out, that I always feel like there's a purpose for everybody in life, and everything happens for a reason. I've always been that kind of type of thinker. I just felt like the way this whole thing unfolded, it was just very, just felt very poetic, everything. So that was kind of how I felt, just very like, I felt for myself that what I invested my time in, and other people like Common Sense Investigator invested her time, and who was here all week, flew in, invested their time in, your efforts and your faith and your everything was rewarded, on top of Kelsey Fitzsimmons, who primarily through and through was rewarded for her strength, her courage, overcoming being shot, having her baby taken away, being framed, basically having her data breached, her laptop and all that, her home essentially broken into, for her family. So I just felt good for them and the defense team. As an individual, I felt the way I felt, but then also from looking at their perspectives, I felt great for them. I felt great for the family, Steve, Will, Lauren, Kelsey's friends. I met a few of them that were there. Felt great for them, felt great for the defense team. So I just kind of felt like someone that had, with many other people, played a hand in assisting that team and family effort. But for them, I felt really great for them. I felt very blessed for them, happy to see them have that level of success. And I told one of the family members, I said, one thing about all of this is that standing up in the face of all this is the biggest thing you can do. And when you do that, you inspire people like us. And I said that to one of the family members in a one-on-one conversation we had. I said, if you guys and Kelsey and the defense team don't stand up, because that's what Karen did. When Karen was on those front steps and her defense team were standing up for what they believed in, that inspired me. When they were doing that, when Kelsey said on September 8th, the truth is going to come out, that inspired me to believe in them and their story. And I'm proud of the fact that myself and every single person that's believed in her, or yourselves who have taken hours and hours of your time on your shows to cover her story, those are the things I feel great about. I'm privileged to be able to help them, and privileged to be able to use my show and work with my co-hosts, work with the panel, work with everybody in the chats, people on X, wherever. I am absolutely privileged and honored to be able to help them and help that family and help that defense team in any way that we possibly could. Because at the end of the day, thank you, Lauren. That's exactly what we were all in this for, was to see the truth come out and see that here it comes. that justice is served. I got you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much. Now I normally hold the super chats, but I want to put this up because
Yeah.
I want Michael to talk about this because
Yeah.
he's really big on this too with you. It's
Yeah.
important to keep in mind they found out about some of the Judge McCarthy Naaman's actions,
Yeah.
like the ex parte meeting with probation
Yeah.
after the SJC appeal. Thank you for that music to my soul. And the reason why I say it, January,
Yeah.
Michael Bryant, he's your hero, isn't he? Officer
He's such
January.
a good dude, you know. Everybody in the probation department really, you know, I don't know why we act surprised, but they did the right thing. Everybody that was representative of the probation department was clearly on the side of doing what was right, not just favoring the Commonwealth, not even favoring Kelsey, doing what was right. And they did from the point where she was released, and they had to check mom and dad's house, Will and Lauren's house, to the point where she was freed from that and had the new place they had to check. They could have dragged their feet. They could have said, you know, we got that on the schedule, you know, for 2-3 days from now. But they did it as quickly as was appropriate. So yeah, and Mr. January, who we named Mr. Tuesday at some point because we forgot his name, he started it all, and everybody who came along to take care of her case after he did a great job. Got nothing bad to say about those folks.
He is the, you know, we talk about all the great people involved in all of this, and January really changed the whole game because he basically just, you know, got Judge Kathleen McCarthy Naaman removed and saved us the horror of having to watch a trial go through her courtroom. And who knows how much more of a, you know, I thought Karp was very fair, which I appreciated. I thought he just, you know, he's not always on either side. He's just kind of down the middle, I felt. And he waited right down to the end, including his reasons for his verdict decision. But I felt that Naaman McCarthy would have been absolutely terrible for this trial, and it would have been a lot of favoritism towards the prosecutor. It would have been another Karen Reed trial, both of them, in fact, and it would have been very tough to listen to.
Yeah, and January too. I mean, he's got to go back to working there, and obviously, I think that he's got some issues with her, and
Yeah.
so we want to give him. You know, he's to me a silent hero. We want to give our support, a shout out to him, even if he doesn't know we're shouting out to him, because it's like Tinkerbell. You know, we want to give him our strength. Just amazing. So.
Mark, we appreciate everything you've done, your time, giving us the
Thank
insights as to what drives you to do what you're doing. And I think a lot of people feel as you do, they're not as proactive, but you know, they see Kelsey Fitzsimmons and it's there, but for the grace of God go I, or my family, or, you know, they feel not only supportive of her, but concerned about themselves.
Yeah.
And so bringing these things to the forefront, I think it's a step in the right direction. Is it going to, you know, is it going to get rid of the McCarthy Naamans? I don't know, but it ain't bad to make sure people are talking about it and know about it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And you can see the great support for you in the chat.
Thank you.
So I have one final question. How does it feel to go from 2 supporters to the mass base that you have, to be able to raise this kind of money, to have a platform that you could bring injustice to light?
Yes, that like I said, I did a sports and movie show for years that had limited viewership, and I just do the shows because I want to do the shows, and then I always figure that however many people view the show is dependent upon the people that have the interest. But it's been an interesting ride the past couple of years ago. Never would have pictured, my channel having a large viewership, and more importantly, the fact that, I'm able to use that to fundraise, impact people's lives in a positive manner, which is what I always want to do. I want to be someone that brings upon positivity to people that I think deserve to have that. And just couldn't imagine that at all. And, I'm very thankful for that. I feel, again, privileged with that. And every time I do a show, I always remember that I'm privileged to have this opportunity. I'm privileged to have people that tune into my show, that follow my channel. It's a privilege. It's not a right. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for the people that choose to follow my show, watch the show, follow me, hear my opinions out, and work with me on my mission statement, which is helping people and raising awareness for matters that need awareness raised. And just grateful for every single person. And again, it's a privilege. It's an honor to be, have people say, we wish to follow your channel. We wish to support you, and come back time and time again. That's something I never envisioned. That's something I never envisioned. I just never thought that would happen. And I'm grateful for that. And I'll continue into the future here to support Kelsey. And then, you never know when another case might spark my interest, and I might say, okay, let's help this person out too and talk about that case. We'll see.
There you go.
And I thought that was going to be the last question Michael was going to
Yeah,
ask
what's
you.
next?
Yeah, exactly.
Next?
Yep. You never know. That's exactly right. You never know what is next. Because I mean, this happened just off the heels of Karen Reed. Kelsey was in this horrible situation just literally weeks after Karen Reed was acquitted. It was like the ending of a movie where the final scene is an intro. It's like the end of the first Mission Impossible where Tom Cruise saves the day, and right at the end, they on the airplane they say,
for the next
"Here's your next mission." It's
Yeah.
like there you go. But that's
Well,
what it's all about. So.
I'm anxious to see what your next mission is there.
Yeah.
So we people connect with you. It's not by accident, buddy. So
thank you.
keep up
Great
the good work.
personality. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great personality.
Michael, thank you
Mark.
so much. And Linda, thank you so much. It's a pleasure meeting both of you guys.
Nice meeting you sort of like on the air. Hopefully
Yes,
we'll see you
exactly.
soon. Yeah.
Take care, man.
Exactly. Take care.
Thanks,
Have a good one.
Right.
What a great
Okay.
person. Oh my
Yeah,
God, what
yeah,
a fabulous,
cool.
humble, great person. I hope everyone subscribes to his channel that was watching us and all. So we do have a bunch of chats to finish.
Yeah,
so let me
I
just-
grabbed this one before I slipped
Okay.
slipped out of my hands there.
Yeah,
that
and
is
then we have one from yesterday too.
Alder
right?
knows 16U. Thanks for bringing us these cases. A pleasure. There's a reason people are connecting with these cases, and we're just doing what we can to, I guess, further that connection, as it were. You got some other stuff
No, you
there.
have one from yesterday.
Oh yeah, I do
Colleen
have.
Kane. All right, and then
Oh,
we'll
you
go
did that
through.
too. Good for you.
No, I printed it out for you because I didn't, I knew that so much was going on that we went. It's 2443 donation. Great shows. You are both.
Look at this.
You both are great educators. There we go. We're co-hosts together, right?
There you go.
Because sometimes things come in after and we don't see them or we're so involved in it. So let's just go through really quickly. Dina, I think we showed 3975 new member. Thank you very much. You can join membership and sometimes they're given out if you are a subscriber. You have to be a subscriber to be a member. And so you have to subscribe, share, like, notify, hype, and then donate too. When we're going to run a scroll over the bottom. People say, well, we don't have a scroll to how you donate, but it's in our link.
Yeah, I'm working on that.
We're working on it.
And we do have
Okay,
a
so-
member first tomorrow at 4, right?
Right.
We're going to get
Remember,
into, we talked
tomorrow
about
at
Karen
4.
Reed, the case that doesn't stop. In this case, the civil version, the latest about all of the phone shenanigans. There's a lot of pieces to kind of go over. So we're going to do that tomorrow, 4 o'clock.
I think we labeled it on our thumbnail. Whack job, Reed Proctor's phone. It's kind of a double entendre. And then we also have a members only set up, if I may take a little personal here for our book club next week at 2. And that's my client, a woman's grandmaster in chess who's got a book that's coming out called Thinking Sideways and how it applies to the legal system. And if you go to my X page, you'll see that we did announce the settlement of a huge case of hers with U.S. Chess, where she becomes an ambassador. I love Jennifer Shahad. Michael met her at the Innocence Project.
Very
Big
sweet.
supporter.
Are you joining for the book club that day?
I'm going to join for the book club that
my
day.
gosh.
She's going to be
Okay.
reading, and I'm going to be joining from the book club.
I will
that
get an
day.
extra glass of wine.
I'll be good. What are you doing here? All right. I love him. Don't you love my pod partner, my streaming partner? He's great. Morrissey, I can't read the Morrissey's
Morrissey's
Lies.
Lies. Morrissey's
YouTube
Lies.
member. Okay. Thank you very much for becoming a YouTube member. That's terrific. Okay. And Kay Schmidt, again, as we posted before, thank you for that donation. They've already been handed out. If you are a subscriber, you can get a membership and see what it's like for the special members first. So we tried to do every week, although this week last week we couldn't do it because Michael was up there at the trial, right? And all. And Mullen Law talking about Mazza Media. You should.
Yeah, and we're gonna have her on too. Met her at the trial. She was lovely, and we're gonna have her on. She's got some local knowledge, an attorney from the area there, so we're gonna have her on.
That'd be great. And Sarah B. Creative, member for 5 months. So much humble heroism, and that's absolutely true. You just saw that tonight and talking to him. You didn't want to stop. You kind of wanted to hug him right through the TV screen, through the computer screen, right? Hope 8 Fear, member for 9 months. Hit that like, subscribe. Thank you. Yes, hit the like button, subscribe. Thank you. Share, notify, hype, and donate. Okay. All right. Here we go. I'm supposed to keep saying that at the beginning of the show. I always forget. How do those work? That's Alan in Texas talking about the commissions that there's usually there's lawyers on these commissions that judge, and sometimes judges that can judge whether a judge has done something wrong. I'm not quite sure what's the makeup of the one in Massachusetts, and they can make a recommendation, and the judge can either agree to it or can try it, and then there's a trial, almost like a regular public trial, but it's not a public trial.
I mean, and that's the most extreme.
That's
I mean,
extreme,
they may
right.
get a slap on the hand, they may get a
Right.
public censure, they may get some sort of reprimand.
Yeah. And then, of course, as we were going on, everyone was asking to get up to 500 likes for Mark or Mazza Media being on. And hopefully, I haven't checked, but hopefully we
I
did
think
that.
we did. I think we did.
we
I think
did.
somebody said we did.
And then we did have him answer this question. I thought that was actually great. And by how I was sitting beside Noonan, I saw this question come up, but he had already answered that. He said that he didn't show an iota of a twitch. He just was there, very stoic. And Mark just felt that he was just there as an observer. Okay. And then we did also ask this question about the atmosphere. So the question came in. Sometimes the questions come in when we're asking the questions a little later. This one we talked about yesterday. Why did Gray?
We did with Jody and Weber.
Jody Weber, right?
Bizarre, weird.
Bizarre, weird, right? It shouldn't have happened. Should have been different. Linda Scott 3558. Why is the SJC afraid to bring forth fair decision about misconduct of judges? Well, in every state, power protects power. That's my opinion, anyhow.
Robes protecting robes.
Robes, or as Michael has coined that, robes protecting robes. Okay. Okay, let's see where the lucky ones. This was something I did not get through. I wanted to try to ask Mark this, why he called, why the prosecutor called Kelsey a liar several times, and that was upsetting if the judge said not to disparage everybody. Well, he was playing for the media.
He gave his closing argument to the jury that wasn't there.
Right.
It didn't pay off.
Right. And then everyone's trying to get 600 likes from Mazza Media. I don't know if he did that. You can tell us afterwards. He gave his closing argument to the jury and, and to the media and maybe to the cops. Maybe the closing argument was for the cops that were sitting in that courtroom because the prosecutors have to deal with the cops all the time. So do the judges. That's why the judge was like, well, I find them both equally, equally believable. I can't decide beyond a reasonable doubt. And if you had body cameras, by the way, we could have had some issue here.
Yeah.
So
By the
judges
way,
don't like to call cops liars either. Okay. Kelsey will win says, please check your subscription. People feel that they're subscribed and they're not. And
it happens.
It happens. Okay.
Yeah, we see YouTube going through some indiscriminate bot action where you were subscribed, you're not anymore.
You're not anymore, so check it. And this was a question I think Kelsey answered on Aiden's interview. And it's interesting that Mark came to this case through Aiden Carney. Okay, so troll me all you want, everybody. Okay. Anyone know how hard it was for her in jail as a cop? She talked about sitting and just crying for her child, right? Just sitting and crying for her child, but she was in segregation. So
and that was for her protection, but that doesn't make it it's not like a vacation, it's for her safety. But still, now you've got nothing but you and your thoughts, and where do they go to your child that you haven't seen in months?
Yeah, or counting the cinder blocks, as she was saying. You count count the cinder blocks on the wall. This was a thank you to Mazza Media. We're privileged to be able to hear your views and opinions. We thank him for coming on the show. Absolutely for coming on the show. Lorraine 4444, London Mike, love you guys and love Mazza. Michael, reaction?
Thank you.
Somebody loves you, Michael. We all love you.
He's a good guy.
He really is.
You can just tell his genuineness. He cares, and he never intended what's happened, but that's the way it works when you do the right thing.
Yeah, a gentle, caring giant doing the right thing. That's a great line, as you always point out. Gaming with Nick 1015. Thanks for all you do, Linda. Michael, great job, Mazza. You're inspiring, wasn't he? He was just so inspiring. This is, I can't read that. Can you read that?
That is Chris Carr 0501. Thank you for your dedication to Kelsey's case. I've enjoyed listening and hearing your passion, like myself.
Yeah, that's right. And then Allie in Texas, no drama. Bradle's obviously genuine care for Kelsey made me tear up. We all wanted to cry. I mean, didn't we all want to cry? Everybody at some point when the judge, we knew the judge was going to say, well, we knew as lawyers when he said that they were both believable, that was equipoise, and therefore there couldn't be a.
As I was watching, Martha Coakley, and she was a little more poker faced. Right up to the point where he said, "I find reasonable doubt." I mean, she really, it seemed to me, was still kind of hanging. So, and again, that's why I say if you've been screwed in court enough times, you almost have to wait to actually hear it before you start anticipating and assuming.
And thank you. I did Common Sense Investigator dime you out, talk about how you did say yesterday that you believe that Justin the alien was carrying all the time. So we did put it on X. Okay, so I hope you don't mind that. Thank you very much for being supportive and all. And the last one I'll put out, Lori Jean Hood. Love this interview the most. Love another great show, Justice Served. Thank you, because we have tried to give you great guests, and we try not to get into the muck with everybody.
No, you can do that, and we're basically just lazy, so we get great guests, and then we ride along on their coattails. That's our theory. So
yeah. So and then tomorrow night we're working on a special show for you. We're still waiting to hear back whether the person can be on, so we haven't announced that. Thursday night, however, we do have.
I know I pulled up. I had to go to my notes from the trial. Maureen Teresi, one of the most popular witnesses, will be here with us. Our exclusive first ever interview. She, of course, the neighbor of Mr. Noonan.
Mr.
And
Noonan
had that crazy encounter with this guy who seemed to be very proud to say, "I'm the shooter."
I'm the shooter. We can't wait to hear about that. Okay. So again, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, notify, hype, and donate to us so that Michael can keep traveling around the United States and the world to say, where in the world is justice? Well, Mazza told us it was tonight. It was done here, the show, when he discussed that justice was served.
That's right. He gave us the plug. Yeah, all right, folks. We appreciate all. Glad you could come along. It's nice to share perspectives with others that are kind of in the same orbit, whatever this is. So we appreciate that. Appreciate everybody sharing. And tomorrow we're going to put some fine
members at 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock the show. Right. So stay with us.
Members first at 4 o'clock with some Karen Reed paperwork, and then our normal show at 6. Until then, hey, have a great evening, please. This is Justice Served TV. Try to do the right.
Riding flames, they charge with